So welcome everybody to the 5BBC's Stretching for Cyclists. Um, we have Jacqueline Gacau, who's volunteered to give of her time tonight, and she's very knowledgeable in this field. I'm going to let her tell you what her credentials are. But from my perspective, I've known her on Facebook for a number of years, and I know she's done some amazing riding, both in terms of very long distance rides, like across Iowa, and other interesting rides she can tell you about. And she's also just ridden a lot in our area as well. And so she knows the pain that can come from cycling, and she knows some stretches that can help you deal with that. We're going to have the chat. I've put you all on mute, and we have the chat here. So if you have any questions, when she pauses, I'll relay them to her. So please ask any questions you have in the chat. And without further ado, thank you, Jacqueline. The floor is yours. Literally, that's your apartment.
This is my floor, my walls. Hi, everyone. I approached Alan. I thought that this might be something that people were interested in. Stretching is one of those things that everybody loves to hate. My background is, for the last 6 years, I've been working with people in pain, some sort of pain or other. Either they've had an injury and they're healing, or they have an ongoing issue that they have to live with. I'm certified as a personal trainer and a health and wellness coach, but I call myself a movement coach, because when you hear personal trainer, you think people getting strong, and what I do is help people function in the world so they can continue to be able to move and do the things that they want to do every day for as long as possible. So one thing that happened to me a couple of years ago, as Alan said, I did ride across Iowa. I rode across Iowa with a pinched nerve in my neck, and I got virtually no sleep. I spent every day riding 50 to 70 miles and up, and then every afternoon with the massage therapist, keeping me, so that I would get a couple of hours to kind of rest a little bit, so that I could go the next day. So stretching is something that we as cyclists really do need to do. Probably the only activity that treats people's bodies worse than cycling is running. And they both have issues, because you're moving pretty much in what's called a sagittal plane, forward and back, and you're not doing much in anything else. You're not doing anything side to side. You're not doing any rotating. In cycling, you're also not doing any movement that's a full range of motion. You're always in some kind of flexion in your back, in your hands, in your neck, in your legs. Nobody is extending their legs fully straight out to pedal. That's not an efficient way to pedal. That becomes an issue over a period of time. I look around at groups and I see incredible numbers of people doing this forward head. Our head, it weighs 10 pounds, and if you're in that forward position all the time, it's heavier than the 10 pounds that it actually weighs. The other thing about stretching is that it doesn't last. It's not like strength, where you build muscles. You don't build flexibility. You have to keep doing it. And so I'm going to be working through head to toe. I picked out a bunch of exercises that maybe not everybody does so frequently. Everybody knows downward dog and a couple of other kinds of things. And so hopefully you'll be able to do it. I encourage people to get up and move. I'm going to be demonstrating 2 or 3 repetitions of these things I have bare feet, so take your shoes off if you're going to do it. It's a lot more meaningful if you actually try it than if you just sit and watch me. I mean, here I am, but So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the head. Head and neck exercises. You can do those either standing or sitting. And I'm going to sit for this one. Actually, I'm going to be in an angle. Oh, geez, I'm sorry, cat. Are you okay? All right. So the first exercise is uh, is a side stretch to the neck, and the way it starts by reaching all the way over as far as you can onto the other side of your neck. Rather than standing on the head and pulling, what you're doing is you're taking the weight of your hand and letting it pull your neck into a gentle stretch. This is less intrusive than that, sitting with your head up and then pulling it over into a stretch. So you're just putting it into this hold, and you usually the recommended length of time for these kind of static stretches is about 20 seconds. Longer if you can stand it. I have no patience, so 20 seconds is usually it. And then same thing on the other side, just letting your head be weighted down by your hand. Now, the other thing that's very important about this is your posture. You want to have your shoulders away from your ears. You want to keep your chest wide, because what you want to do is isolate that muscle. Every time you do a stretch, you want to stretch a particular muscle, and you don't want to be up like this, because this isn't going to help. The next one is probably easier if I show you a little bit of the back as well as the front. So the next one is you're taking your hand to your back, and you're grasping that hand with the opposite hand, so that the hand that's grasping is out like a kimbo, kind of like you're got your hands on your waist. All right, and you'll lean your head towards the hand that you're stretching, and then you want to look up and look down, and you're at an angle. You'll find with this one that one side of you is probably going to be a little stiffer than the other side. So then the other way would be to change hands, pull aside, and switch to the other. Looking up and looking down. And up and down. So that gives you not only a side stretch, but an angled stretch. The other stretch that is important, but probably you do more than the ones I just showed you, because it's a direct, straightforward thing. So putting your hands behind your head, and again, lower your shoulders, open your chest, so that the only thing that's moving is the back of your neck. Pulling your hands forward so that your chin drops to your chest, and you should feel a good strong stretch in the back of your neck. I do these a lot of times. I'll do them when we're on a break, because when I get off the bike, I'm going to be stiff, and it's not something that I can do while I'm riding. This next one is something that you can do when you're riding, and it may not. It's called a chin tuck, and it's kind of a not very exciting exercise until you really understand, until you really strengthen the back of your neck and your rhomboids. So when I started doing it after my pinched nerve that I had and I had no movement, I worked for about probably a month telling my PT that I couldn't feel anything. And then one day I was doing it home and suddenly I felt this movement. And I went in and I said to him, I said, I guess I wasn't moving much. He said, no, you weren't moving at all. So there are a couple of ways. So I'm gonna demonstrate it from the side because that's the best way to see what's going on. So a chin tuck is basically your chin is parallel to the floor. Hopefully your shoulders are down, your chest is wide, you're not winging your scapula, and you want to pull your chin back. You can help it by pushing with a couple of fingers. If you feel like you're not doing much, you're probably not doing very much. There's a couple of things you can do to get a little more sense of what's going on. You can do it against a wall. You can do it lying down. After a while, you'll develop a lot of movement in the neck. I do 10 at a time usually, 1, 2, 3, you know, and I do them when I'm riding. If I feel myself tightening up, I come up on the handlebars, and I just do 10 of those, and it eases some of the pain that comes down the back of our neck when we're riding. I'm watching people ride all the time, and so I see that people are hunched over, rounded, and as they get tired, the shoulders come up. So this is something that will stop that.
There's a little reminder here that everyone should continue breathing through stretches. Do you want to just talk a little bit about breathing?
Yes, breathe. um, oh, um, breathing when cycling actually is a thing. When I started, I was a nose breather, which means that air is coming up through my nose and it's taking some time to get down into my diaphragm. It's a lot more efficient to be breathing through your mouth because that's going to get air directly in there. When you breathe, you want to make sure that you're feeling it in your diaphragm, not in your chest. And that goes for no matter what kind of movement you're doing. In strength training, the rule of thumb is that you inhale on the uptake and you exhale on the uptake and you let me get it right because I get it confused when I have to describe it. You exhale on the exertion and you inhale on the release. So it's harder to tell what you're doing in a stretch. It's not so important that it be in that particular order, but the full length of breathing is very important when you're stretching, so that you relax the rest of your body that's not supposed to be working at that moment. So then I'm going to move down towards the shoulders. So two shoulder stretches that are really helpful. I'm going to right after this, I'm going to talk a little bit about something else. So one really good stretch is to standing up, clasping your hands behind you, and you're not bringing it out particularly far from your body. What you're doing is you're pulling down from your shoulders. If you are feeling your scapula poking out, then what you need to do is kind of um, grasp, kind of clench in so that they straighten up, and there's nothing coming out of your back. Another really good stretch is I call it an alphabet stretch. It's done against a wall, starting with your hands out in a T, and trying to bring your shoulders and your head against the wall. If you have trouble with this, putting a small pillow on your head, against your head, will help, because it's more important that you keep your shoulders against the wall until everything gets lined up. All right, so T, bringing the hands up, keeping the shoulders down, into a Y, bringing them down into a W, so everything's against the wall, and then coming up into a U or a goalpost, straight all the way up. I call this a Y, an I, and then down into an O. Any questions? We're okay. We're okay.
We're
All right.
good. Yeah.
Okay. The next thing I'm going to work on is your hands. So nobody thinks about stretching your hands. A lot of times, also if you go to exercise classes and they're doing exercises 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, it's like it doesn't feel like you're doing much. It's because there's only that much time that's left. So a lot of things are combined. So a lot of times, if you're doing quad stretch, you're also have your hand up and doing a balance challenge at the same time. But our hands. So we're constantly leaning on them, moving them around, holding their inflection. They're holding on to the handlebars. Hopefully, you're not leaning on them so much that your wrists are going back. Good hand position on your bike is that your wrists and your hand and your arm are in line. So there's a lot of this kind of thing going on with bikes, whether you're on a flat bar or a round or a drop bar. It doesn't matter. The thing to watch out for, and will make your hands be a lot more comfortable, is keeping that alignment from your arm to the top of your hand. So that being said, there are some good stretches that you can do to kind of relieve some of that. The first is to work on your wrist. You can do one hand at a time, or two if both hands. I usually do two because I'm lazy. All right, and so bending from the wrist forward and back, not rocket science. And then coming forward laterally, and transverse, rotating them one direction and the other. So there's like 6 planes of motion that we do. We mostly are doing front to back. That's called sagittal. We do a lot of stuff left to right, but we don't pay an awful lot of attention to rotating, which really is the majority of our day-to-day activities. I mean, you're reaching for something in a cabinet or down to the bottom to pick up something from a shelf. On a bike, you're not doing much of that, except if you're turning, and then you're really just kind of leaning. All right, so the next one is hands. So starting with a fleck for an extended hand, and then a fist. Real simple. All right. Next part is to take the same thing and starting straight, curling your hands down and trying to stretch the fingers all the way to the meaty part of your palm. And up, coming down, and up. Then the next one you want to try is to stretch each finger and thumb across the hand, one finger at a time, down and up, down and up, and then back. This one is sort of easier to concentrate if you do one at a time. And finally, the last one is touching each finger with your thumb and back for some cross across the hand movement. The final one is a wrist release. You have to be careful with this one, as if you've got any wrist issues, don't do it. So you're bringing your hand in a, oh, I do it the other direction because I can't see my hand. Bringing your hand straight forward and flex it, extending it down, and then just kind of gently stretch each finger back, including the thumb, and work it back so that you do each one twice. And same thing on the other hand. Make sure you keep your arms straight so that all of the muscles in your wrist are being worked on. So that's hands.
A question, just so you repeat it into the video, there was a question about the letters that you mentioned, TYWUIO.
Yeah.
Can you just repeat what that was about, just so we have it?
Yeah. It's kind of a fun one. I like it because, so T, Y, W, U, I, and O.
That's like the YMCA routine that we did on the dance party. There you go.
Right.
Also, when you were doing those hand motions, I thought, do you ever think about maybe you could help the queen? She must have to practice when she did. It looked like those little waves that she does.
The royal wave.
Just a reminder to everybody, we're taking questions in the Q&A. Go ahead.
Yeah. So the next few are going to be lying down ones, and I'm not really set up to do it except on my floor, so bear with me. I have a couple of cubes that I'm going to set up and try to keep myself above the bottom of the screen. All right.
Oh, you want to stay off the carpet?
I want to stay off the carpet?
Oh, no, we can see you. Go ahead.
Yeah, because I'm up. Yeah,
that's fine. Yep.
The reason is that these things are on wheels, and it's a little dangerous if they're on the the wood.
There is a question for whenever you're ready. It can wait till after you do the floor work, but any exercise for thumbs in particular?
Well, the one from finger to finger it includes the thumb, so giving yourself a fist and extending uses the thumb. Anything that I'm doing with any of the hands, I've got what in particular is the question referring to?
Nothing. That was it. Thumb stretch. It
Yeah.
feels like stuck. If the thumb feels it's stuck.
Yeah, well, stretching it across the hand is usually one of my go-to things, and then also trying to touch each finger with the thumb, and then just plain find myself a lot of times just making a fist and extending it. There are things you can get that are helpful for hands. This is a little cheapo uh, finger stretcher. It's for extension, which is kind of neat because most of the things we do with our hands is flexion. So these things come in different resistance. And you start with the light one, and then you build it up to the one that's not. This is another one I have. Uh, this one I don't like as much. Everything's backwards. Sorry. Um, so there's certainly a lot of little pieces of equipment you can get. All right, so everybody's probably familiar with this one. It's a bridge. It is for the lower back. I'm gonna have to kind of jerry rig at it. When you're doing a bridge, you want your back on the floor, on the ground or the mat or whatever it is. And when you raise yourself, you want to raise yourself from your butt. One of the things that consistently goes wrong is people clench their hamstrings, and that causes a cramp. So that's one thing that that you kind of have to be aware of. The cure for that is to keep your legs closer to your body. So rather than extending them.
While you're dealing with the cat, I'll let you know that someone made a comment that I just want to read in. Try clasping a tennis ball very gently if your thumb feels stuck, to the person earlier. And there's a quick question. Can you use those stretchy things that you were just showing if you have carpal tunnel? What's the name? Is it helpful for that?
Carpal tunnel. Carpal tunnel is a wrist issue. Like it's also called charwoman's disease. Usually requires an operation to cure. I had a boyfriend that had it at one time. I mean, I'm not a doctor. I wouldn't even try to give an opinion on
So you're
what
not going to play one on TV.
no.
Okay, carry on with where you are.
Right. I'm gonna have to see if I can do this on the floor in the
There's
towards the back of the apartment, because
there,
these things are not long enough for me to
do you
do any.
recommend squeezing glutes while bridging?
Yeah, because it's that won't stretch them, but that's a good strengthener. So when you do a bridge, I think people can see me on the floor. I'll be a little small. Am I visible?
Yeah, you're visible. Another quick question about the hands still. Would you recommend using what were once called Chinese balls for hand stretches? They generally had a Chinese motif with chimes in them, and you roll them around your hands. You know what we're talking about?
I don't actually.
Someone's offering to show them, but let's leave that for the end.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I'm not familiar
Also,
with this.
B6 is helpful for carpal tunnel, also using a wrist brace to rest the joints. Just
Yeah,
comments
I'm
come up.
sure, yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
let's focus where you are.
Okay. Thanks. Uh, all right. So people can see me?
Yep.
All right. So in a bridge, keeping your feet, from the knee down, you want them to be perpendicular to the ground. And when you come up, you are clenching your butt, all right? What you're not doing is you're not arching your back. So it should be a straight line. What you're aiming at is a straight line from where you're pinned to the ground with your shoulders to your knee. And this is a really good exercise for your lower back if you do it in the right position. All right, if you're arching or you're not all the way down, it's not doing you any good. The next one is a rotation. All right, so probably people are a little familiar with this one. It's kind of a standard in most fitness classes. So starting on your back, and with your feet, with your knees bent, and leaning over to one side with just your lower torso and your legs. You can do this with your hands extended out. You can do it with your hands, just kind of lying on your stomach. It doesn't really matter. You get a little more stretch in your upper body if you extend them out, and then you bring them over and stretch the other side. Now, if you can't, if you're really tight, you can put either a yoga block or a towel folded underneath your the bottom leg, so that so that you're not straining yourself. A stretch should feel good. It should. It's not like myofascial where you're going to be in pain. It should feel good, and as you relax into it, you'll be able to go to extend what you're stretching more than when you started. So don't try to stretch immediately flopping onto the floor if you haven't been doing this for a while. If you don't have anything fitness oriented at home, a towel will work just as well as anything else. All right. So now I'm moving to the hips and lower back. The hips in cycling are always getting tight. I don't know anybody that doesn't finish any kind of a length of ride that doesn't feel like they've been sitting at a computer the whole day, actually, because what happens is sitting on a bike causes your muscles to shorten, and it causes the ones that you're leaning towards, and it causes the ones that are being stretched to lengthen. One gets weak and one gets tight. So stretching those out. I don't really have time to go into myofascial, but if you're familiar with what they call foam rolling, which is a misnomer, doing that before a stretch will prepare you to relax a little bit. So the first one is kind of a familiar one: sitting up straight, bending one leg, bringing it over the extended leg, and actually I'll do the other one, and then twisting towards the bent leg. Bring your hand in front of that bent leg and pull back so that you feel a stretch in your thigh. And then if you can, start to rotate towards your back so that you can feel not only the stretch in your thigh, but also in your lateral muscles going down your torso. And then same thing happens on the other side. And it's a nice release for your torso as well as a stretch to your thigh.
Here's a
Uh,
question while you're there. Any stretches so that your knees don't stiffen after a ride?
well, this bending your legs will do that. That's one of the reasons I brought up myofascial. You might, if you're not familiar with it, googling it will. I'll write down the spelling after. We'll give you some information. This is another one that's good for stretching when you're after a ride. It's for stretching your buttocks, but it's going to also include some gentle movement of your knee. So you're starting in a lying down position, bending your knee, and it's just this is very, very straightforward stretch. You're just putting your hands not at the joint of your knee, but just below it, so that you're not stressing out something that can be injured. All right, so bringing it back as far as you can. Some people, if you're tight, just bring it back as far as you can. But if you can, you want to try to get it, eventually you want to be able to feel like you can move it a little farther. So that one, and the other leg also. So that's a straightforward forward and back one. Probably feel good because you've been kind of sitting in this forward moving position for a couple of hours. The next one starts to give you some movement to your hip. And so this is called a figure 4. All right, so both lying on your back, both legs bent, and one leg, you take one leg and put it over onto your thigh, on the top of your thigh. Again, grasping your underneath your thigh and pulling back a little bit. And as you do that, you want to take your opposite hand, the hand that is near arm that's near the bent leg, that's kind of in that figure 4 position, and push it away from you. Push the leg away from you. You can't see that. I'm going to do it the other way. Backwards, right? So you're pushing this leg back, and you'll feel your hips, your hip flexors kind of loosen up and pull out. My cat in the way of me, or can you see me anyway?
You're fine.
All right. And then finally, this last one is called a 90-90 stretch. If you do yoga, you may be familiar with something called a pigeon pose. So this is a modification of a pigeon pose. The front leg is extended.
Can you move on to your mat a little bit back? Yeah,
Yep.
perfect. There you
Yep. Okay. The front leg is extended. The upper thigh is extended straight forward, and then and you're bending your knee at a 90-degree angle. In the back, you're coming back and taking that other leg out also at 90 degrees from your torso, and you're bending your knee at 90 degrees back. So the back leg from the knee down is facing straight back, and the thigh from the hip forward is straight forward. What you do from there is you're going to be leaning forward with a neutral back, not taking the point is not to bend yourself into a pretzel, but rather to stretch your glute, your butt, and you'll be stretching mostly the front of the 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 part of the glute that is in the front leg. So you're coming forward and stop when you feel like you're going to have to bend to round your back. So wherever that is, whether it's up here or all the way down, don't go any farther than where you can maintain a neutral back. So both legs might be easier to see. So again, same thing, straight, coming forward, straight out, and going straight back. Leaning forward and coming up. All right. So that's your hip and lower back. All right. This next section are standing, and they're basically the same movement done with different with your leg in different positions. They're lunges. So there's the first one is a back lunge. When you do a back lunge, you want to come only as far as pain-free. So don't try to get your foot, your knee, your back knee, all the way down to the floor. It's not necessary. The next one will be, I'll go through all of the movements, but I just want to give you an overview of it. So the next one is a side lunge or lateral lunge. And the thing with this one and also the back lunge is your toes should be facing forward. So especially on this lateral lunge, you don't want to have your feet like one foot facing out that way. They should both be facing forward. Your torso should be facing forward. And when you move to the other side, you move your whole body. I've seen people do this. This is a dance, not a lot of lunge. So we're not going to do this, but if you're in a situation where you're moving from side to side, it's lateral. It's not. And the last one is a transverse lunge or a curtsy lunge. You're taking your foot and you're crossing it in front. And that lunge is a little complicated for you to keep it correct. Again, with a curtsy lunge or transverse lunge, you want your torso to face forward, not to be twisted in one way or the other. All right. If it's difficult, you have knee problems, whatever it is, don't do such a big curtsy. You can do the same thing by just bringing your feet in line with each other, and you'll get the same rotational movement. So, starting with the back lunge, and I always talk about a back lunge because a back lunge is easier to get into if you have knee issues or if you have balance issues, and it's easier to keep to get your body, your torso centered over both legs. So the movement is you're reaching down, neutral back, coming up, reaching forward, and coming back. Reaching to the same side as the leg that's forward, and coming forward, reaching forward again, and coming back. You'll feel a stretch. You should feel a stretch in your calf, in your ankle. You should not feel any pain in your knee, the front knee. So if you do, you need to bring yourself back so that where you're feeling the tension and the stretch is in your glute and your hamstring. All right. And then after you're forward, then you want to go the same direction as the back leg and back together. All right. And then the same thing on the other side. So reaching down, coming up, reaching forward and coming back, reaching towards the side of the forward leg and coming up, forward again and back and towards the other side and coming back. You can do these same moves without the reach. You can do it with your hands on against your hips. So same movement almost. You can bend forward and up, twist to one side without a push, and twist to the other side. That'll give you a little different rotation in your torso. To the side, same. It's the same moves. So when you come over into your side lunge, you want to reach towards the floor and up. Reach forward. When you reach forward in this position, what you're really doing is you're bringing your butt back. Because if you just reach forward, you're going to fall over and back. And then again, at a diagonal and up, forward and up, and to the other side and up. Let me just see what time it is. I'm going to cut short a little bit. The next one will be
You can go over if you have more to cover. It's up to you.
well, this is probably the longest one, and then I'm down to the feet and a couple of whole body things.
Okay.
So, all right. So, with the curtsy lunge or transverse lunge, or some people call it a sissy lunge, which is kind of a oxymoron as far as I'm concerned. So you're in this cross-leg position and reaching down, back up, reaching forward. Again, your butt goes back at the same time as you bring your hands forward so that you're still balancing yourself. And reaching to one side and forward and to the other side. So it's kind of depends on how much time you have. I want to when I finish, I just want to talk a little bit about when you should stretch. But right now, I'll just get on to the next one. Oh, the next one is feet. So feet. So we spend our time in these shoes that don't let our feet move, right? How many people have problems with feeling like they are cramping at night? I know I used to. So part of it has to do with your shoe, but a lot of it has to do with flexibility, mobility, and strength in your feet and your ankles and your calves. So very simple stuff that you can start with. There's always more. There's the tennis ball approach and that kind of thing that are helpful, but you can do these kind of anywhere. So starting with your feet just slightly apart from one another, coming up on your toes. Everybody's familiar with this. And then putting your heels together, and I guess they call this ballet position 1. And then the next one is to bring your toes in and do the same, bringing your toes up. So if you find that you're having some balance problems with this, hold on to a wall. All right. Um, the next one is for the front of your feet. So your toes don't get an awful lot of movement to them on a normal basis. They're always encased in something that's keeping them together. So one thing I recommend is barefoot shoes, but they take some time to get used to. So what you can do is bringing your feet just about a little bit farther away than when you were coming up on your toes. You're gonna raise your toes, lift your toes. So just your toes. You don't want to come up on your heels. The 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 idea is to flex your toes up. All right, and then you're lifting your feet up just a little bit and rotating them out with your toes up. Putting your toes down, lifting them back up, and rotating back to the front and putting them down. This is a great stretch for your for the front of your foot and all of your toes to do on a regular basis. You can do it while you're um, doing whatever else you're doing. All right, the last one is for ankle flexibility. You want to come out about shoulder width apart on your feet and rotating out laterally. So turning your ankles out, pronating, and then bringing them back in, supine. We don't realize how much our feet are not being used. I recently started having to do some exercises where the point is to exercise my knee. But the way that I do it is I'm pointing and flexing my toe to activate the muscles that are below the knee. And it's taken me about 2 months to be able to do 20 repetitions. When I started, I could barely do 5. So it's amazing how much. Oh, I'm not ready for this yet. All right, so okay, so you're exercising, you're doing all these things that are isolating each muscle. Well, you can do some exercises you can do are full body, and they're stretching everything at the same time. If you have taken yoga, you may be familiar with the downward dog, which is stretching your back and your butt and all the muscles in your legs and your ankles. So I'm not going to demonstrate that one because take a yoga class. But there are two other ones that are really helpful. One is 2 variations on a standing forward bend. So one of them, you're standing with your feet about shoulder width apart, clasping your hands behind your back. Turn the other way. And bending from the hip. Bending from the hip. And as you bend from the hip, you want to let your arms kind of fall over as far as they can. Some people are more flexible, some people are less. Not bending your knees in this particular exercise. You're just letting your arms fall down. So you should feel this in your shoulders. You should not feel this in your neck. And you should also feel it up the back of your legs, all the way up the back of your legs. The variation on this is a standing chest stretch. So in this one, you're going to be wider. The wider you are, the easier the stretch will be. And if your hamstrings are tight, you can bend your knees a little bit. So coming forward, again, bending from your hip, bring your hands on top of your head or in front of them, kind of, what's this called? This is called something, I don't remember. Anyway, kind of like with one hand on top of the other, bending over and trying to reach all the way to the floor. So some days are better than others, and if you need to bend your knees in order to get them down there, the point of this particular stretch is to get a feeling in the back of your spine. And then the last one that's kind of a full body, that's kind of fun, is uh, it's called the camel pose. So you're on your knees with your toes under your foot. You can do this with your feet down, but it's harder, and it's more stress on your ankle. So if you can do it with your toes under you, you're going to be happier. All right, and then you want to bend back, and this is a great stretch for your chest. If you find you can't reach your toes, you can use your couch behind you, a chair, a table, whatever, to just get that stretch in the front of your body. Everything else that we've been stretching has been the front. So this is a good stretch for your quads, and it will open up your chest. So that's all my stretches. I said I had something to say, and it fell out of my head. Oh, when should you stretch? So warming up and cooling down when you're going on a bike ride is not stretching. You can stretch, you can do those stretch exercises, but you'd be better off doing some movement instead. I usually, when I start riding, I just ride slow. After you finish, you can just reverse the whole thing. Stretching, on the other hand, should be done throughout the day. You're better off doing 15 minutes before you get up in the morning, if you can do it right in bed. Some stretches that are lying down. I do bridges and that figure 4 thing every morning. Taking 10 minutes throughout the day to stretch as a break is, in my opinion, better than meditating. As I said at the beginning, stretching is not something that you build up. You're not, when you're lifting weights, your muscles are getting stronger. You start to use more weight. When you're stretching, you're going to be stretching that area. If you're doing it consistently, you're going to be more flexible. You're going to be more mobile. But it's because you're always doing it. It's not because you spend an hour 3 times a week doing it. It's not gonna have a carryover. So that's kind of a basic quick view of what's possible. I mentioned myofascial. Myofascial is a way of relaxing the tissue that's holding your muscles from being able to stretch. And a lot of times it's not, if you find that you're having problems getting your stretches to improve, it's probably because the soft tissue is all knotted up inside. And so there are a lot of there are a number of ways that you can do that, from using a foam roller to using a tennis ball. And there's a lot of resources on Google that you can find, or you can set up a individual session with me if you want. I do single sessions of myofascial, and it's something that is really helpful, that works along with it. We all have our IT band is tight. Our quads get really tight, and hamstrings get really tight.
So we
I
had one more comment, which was just a comment that anyone with wrist issues should look for bicycle gloves with maximum padding on the heels of the hand to help absorb road vibrations. And Ron said that he is now as limber as your cat, Jacqueline, thanks to your class here.
So also, the thing about padding and your hands is, as you get older, you lose this padding in the palms of your hands. So yeah, padding in your gloves becomes much more important as you know as you ride longer distances. My current bike even has, what do you call it, suspension in it that kind of relieves some of that up and down stuff, because if you find your hands getting numb, and I've experienced that, it's a really uncomfortable feeling, and it doesn't go away. And a lot of it has, some of it has nothing to do with our makeup. It has to do with the fact that we're riding on these awful roads that are that are just beating us up all the time.
Is there
So
anything more you wanted to say? Because what I'd like to do, if we're done, is, I haven't tried this before, but I'm going to unmute everybody and let everybody give you a big hand, because this really was amazing. Thank you, Jacqueline.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jacqueline.
Fantastic.
All right, so thank you, everybody. Look for, this is going to be posted on YouTube, so tell your friends to look out for Jacqueline's work there. And we have other programming listed off the website. We hope we'll see you again. Thank you all for coming, and thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Had a great time. I'm glad it was helpful.
That was great.
Hit the road, hopefully soon.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, thank you.
Stay healthy, stay strong.
Thank you, Alan.
Thank you, Alan.
Pleasure.